We've all heard of it. The cosmic endpoint, the black hole's dark secret. But today, we are tearing up the classical physics playbook to ask one fundamental question.
Yeah, because the paper we are unpacking today isn't just it's not a minor addendum to the standard model.
Yeah.
It literally demands a complete reevaluation of reality itself, starting from the absolute beginning.
Okay, so let's unpack this right from the start. I want you, the listener, to hold this highly specific question in your mind throughout our entire conversation today. I am going to look right into the metaphorical camera, so to speak, and ask, what exactly is singularity?
Setting that as the anchor for our discussion it's crucial because the definition of that one word dictates the entire architecture of the cosmos.
Right. Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Satosha.
And I'm Satoshi. In classical general relativity, we are taught to view the singularity as the strict boundary condition. It is the theoretical point at the center of a black hole, or the origin of the Big Bang, where the space-time metric tensor just completely diverges.
Okay, but what does that actually mean in plain English?
Well, the classical math results in infinite scalar curvature, meaning you have infinite physical density, and the spatial volume collapses down to absolute zero.
Wait, I need to push back on that immediately because
Yeah.
that sounds like a glitch in a video game, not physical reality.
Yeah.
You're saying classical physics asks us to believe that we have infinite matter, literally an endless amount of physical stuff crammed into exactly zero space.
Exactly.
Doesn't that break the very laws of physics we rely on every single day?
It completely breaks them. And the paradox you are pointing out is the exact reason this new white paper exists. That classical definition yields mathematically intractable infinities.
So the math just blows up.
Right. When you try to cram infinite density into zero volume, quantum field theory just completely breaks down. It loses all of its predictive capacity. For nearly a century, we've essentially accepted a broken model at the extremes of our universe.
Wow.
We assumed the universe was doing something impossible rather than just admitting our mathematical tools were failing at that specific boundary.
So we've basically been using a broken ruler to measure the edge of the universe, and when the ruler snapped, we blamed the universe.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. I mean, the author of this version 5 singularity hypothesis argues that the infinite density paradox isn't a physical reality at all. It is literally a mathematical failure of the classical formulation.
So if a singularity isn't an infinitely heavy dot of literally nothingness, what is it? The answer completely redefines who or what is observing the universe.
Yeah, what if the singularity isn't a place in space, but the very act of looking at it?
Shifting the paradigm from physical mass to topological awareness. That is the first major leap this research asks us to make.
It is. Here is where it gets really interesting. The author introduces a completely new topological and algebraic reevaluation of the singularity. They argue that the singularity is fundamentally the observer itself.
The observer.
Right. It is the absolute reference point in space.
But that feels incredibly abstract, How does an observer replace a super dense black hole?
Well, the key is this concept the paper calls chiral synchronization. To understand this, we really need to view reality not as a single block of stuff, but as a dual manifestation.
A dual manifestation of?
Yeah. The paper argues that this absolute primordial state, the singularity, is achieved when two distinct domains perfectly align. The first is the manifested physical structure, which is the actual geometry of reality.
So the matter.
Exactly. And the second is the manifested cognitive intelligence. When these two elements achieve a complete one-to-one synchronization, where the discrepancy between them, the imbalance delta equals zero, you have a singularity.
Okay, to make this concrete for you listening at home, let's build a metaphor that we can carry through this entire deep dive. Think of energy manifesting into two distinct things. On one hand, you have matter, the physical geometry.
Right.
Think of this matter as a physical glove. It has shape, it has structure, it has empty fingers waiting to be filled. On the other hand, you have cognitive intelligence. The unseen force, the intent, the awareness. This intelligence is the hand that fills up that physical glove.
I love that analogy because the geometry of the glove and the structure of the hand are chiral, meaning they are mirror images of each other. The physical structure is the outer shell, and the cognitive intelligence is the inner sustaining force.
So if I'm tracking with the paper here, a singularity isn't a crushed star. A singularity is just the state of reality where the invisible hand perfectly, flawlessly fits inside the physical glove.
Yes. without any gaps, without any stretching. When cognitive intelligence exactly matches the physical geometry it inhabits, the imbalance delta is just zero.
But hold on, if we are calling this intelligence the observer, are we getting into panpsychism here? Like, are we saying a rock has consciousness?
No, no. The paper strictly avoids mystical definitions of intelligence. In this framework, cognitive intelligence is simply the informational intent that structures the physical geometry.
Informational intent.
Right. When they are in a one-to-one chiral synchronization, the system doesn't just sit there passively. It becomes an active point of reference. It becomes a localized realization of the singularity itself, capable of processing information with zero friction.
It sounds philosophical, almost mystical.
Yeah.
But history shows us that the biggest breakthroughs in physics always start exactly like this, with a gut feeling before a single equation is ever written.
Yeah, you don't start with the math. You start with a falling apple or a moving elevator, and you reverse engineer the universe.
I really love this section of the white paper because it demystifies how theoretical physics actually works. We tend to have this cultural image of a genius physicist standing in front of a chalkboard, right? Writing out complex equations until a brand new universe magically pops out of the math.
Which is a complete myth.
Exactly. It's a myth.
The paper explicitly dissects this historical methodology to validate its own approach. Consider the Newtonian paradigm. Sir Isaac Newton did not sit down with differential calculus to discover gravity.
No, he observed a physical phenomenon, the famous falling apple.
Right. And from that localized event, he developed a profound structural intuition, this idea of universal gravitation. He intuited that the exact same attractive force pulling the apple to the dirt was uniformly operating across celestial bodies, keeping the moon in orbit.
So the structural concept came first. The what and the why were established in his mind before the how was ever written down.
Yeah, Newton actually had to invent fluxions, which later became differential calculus, specifically to backward propagate the mathematical proof for the physical architecture he had already visualized.
And Einstein did the exact same thing, didn't he?
He did.
He didn't start with tensor calculus. He used thought experiments. He imagined himself riding alongside a beam of light. He imagined being trapped in an elevator accelerating upward in deep space and realized he wouldn't be able to tell the difference between that acceleration and gravity.
Exactly. That intuitive leap is how he arrived at mass energy equivalence and space-time curvature. He appropriated complex pseudo-Riemannian geometry much later just to formalize the proof.
Right.
And this current white paper follows that established epistemological trajectory. The author first establishes the foundational intuition, that the singularity is the observer, operating via this dual chiral equivalence of the hand and the glove.
The intuition comes first.
Always. Only after building that structural architecture do they apply pre-existing mathematical tools to rigorously prove it.
But I have to push back here on behalf of our listeners. Intuition can be incredibly deceptive, right? I intuitively feel like the earth is flat when I walk down to the grocery store. I intuitively feel like time is a constant ticking clock. How does this research paper actually bridge the massive gap between a cool glove and hand philosophical concept and rigorous testable physical science?
Well, to bridge that gap, we have to transition from the epistemological intuition to the actual mechanics of weaving the fabric of space itself. And don't worry, we won't make you do the algebra, but we will ask you to roll the dice.
We're about to weave 3D space out of pure imagination, literally.
Mapping cognitive operations directly onto spatial geometry requires a very specific set of mathematical tools.
Now, if you pull up the white paper on your screen, this is the section where you are going to hit a wall of dense equations. The author uses quaternionic spatial geometry and Clifford algebras to map these spatial operations. And I am stepping in right now to lay down a ground rule for this deep dive.
Please do.
We are not going to read out the cross products, the scalar inner products, or the complex algebraic formulas. Our goal is to grasp the essence of what the author achieved with this math. But for those of you who want the rigorous step-by-step derivation, please check the detailed mathematical derivations on our website.
Setting aside the raw equations, the conceptual essence of the math is just incredibly elegant. The paper needs to formalize how physical reality emerges from that absolute, frictionless point of intelligence we defined as the singularity.
Right.
To do this, it maps spatial operations directly onto the pure imaginary generators of the quaternionic field.
Let's translate that out of textbook speak. What is this math actually doing in the real world?
It provides the proof for how a scalar observer, that primordial point of intelligence, weaves through three-dimensional space. The math demonstrates how the observer uses these specific mathematical generators to create orthogonal spatial units out of a completely dimensionless state.
So if I am just floating in an absolute void, this math is the blueprint for how my intelligence draws the fundamental axes of up and down, left and right, forward and back.
Precisely. The math rigorously lays out the rules for how the invisible intelligence, the hand, moves and constructs the physical geometry, the glove. It proves that physical space isn't a passive, empty container that we just happen to exist inside of.
This is a wild concept. You're saying space is actively generated by the sequential operations of the observer.
Yes.
The observer is literally writing the code of spatial reality just by moving through it.
The spatial manifold is a direct product of those operations, yes. And within this specific mathematical framework, the order in which the observer executes those moves changes the resulting reality entirely. Let me show you what happens when you play a cosmic game of craps.
Oh man, if you turn right, then step forward. You are in a different universe than if you step forward, then turn right. Welcome to non-commutative geometry.
Sequence dictating reality is a severe departure from how we normally interact with basic arithmetic.
Yeah, usually when physics textbooks try to explain 3D spatial rotations, they use these incredibly dry examples with vectors and chalkboards that put everyone to sleep. But we need a novel metaphor to visualize what this paper is doing, something you can picture vividly.
Let's hear it.
I want you to imagine a standard six-sided dice sitting on the table right in front of you. Let's say the 1 is facing straight up at the ceiling, and the 2 is facing directly at your chest.
A standard orientation in three-dimensional space.
Right. Now, in your mind, pick up that dice and rotate it forward 90 degrees. The 2 is now face down on the table. Next, rotate it to the right, 90 degrees. Look at whatever number is currently facing up the ceiling. Keep that number in your head. Now, reset the dice back to the exact starting position. 1 is up, 2 is facing you. This time, we reverse the sequence. Rotate it to the right first, then rotate it forward. Look at the top of the dice. A completely different number is facing up.
And that physical manipulation of the dice perfectly illustrates the concept of non-commutative multiplication.
Right.
In this framework, the sequence matters on a fundamental level. Moving axis A, then moving axis B, does not yield the same topological result as moving axis B, then moving axis A. In algebra, we say A times B does not equal B times A.
And the paper uses pure quaternions to mathematically prove this happens at the foundational level of reality. But I have to ask, if I roll the dice in a different order, so what? Why does a rotated frame matter to the universe?
Again, we encourage listeners to review the mathematical derivations of these quaternionic cross products on the website. But conceptually, the math shows that changing the sequence order flips the mathematical sign of the resulting spatial vector.
Flipping the sign meaning it creates a negative version, like a mirror image.
Yes. It converts a right-handed spatial frame into a left-handed spatial frame. It generates chiral images. The geometry of space is inexorably tied to the exact order in which the observer executes its spatial operations.
Okay, I follow the dice. Spatial moves are order-dependent. The sequence dictates the final orientation. But how does this step-by-step rolling of the dice connect to the living, breathing universe we inhabit?
Because that ordinal sequence doesn't just move physical objects around a room. It generates the one fundamental force we can never pause and never get back: time.
Time isn't a clock ticking in the background of the universe. Time is the sequence of your own moves.
Shifting time from a foundational dimension to an emergent property is perhaps the most radical claim in this entire research.
We really need to pause and absorb this, because it flips everything we assume about reality on its head. I mean, we usually think of time as this invisible river we are floating down. We assume time is passing right now, independently of us, whether we are moving or standing completely still.
Right. The standard model treats space-time as a four-dimensional fabric.
But this white paper asserts that time is not a fundamental dimension of the universe at all.
Exactly. Recall the non-commutative multiplication we just visualized with the dice. The fact that rolling the dice forward then right creates a different reality than rolling it right then forward.
Yeah.
The math demonstrates a non-zero commutator, which is a formal way of stating that sequential spatial moves are strictly order-dependent. The paper claims that this ordinal sequence, the step-by-step non-commutative spatial moves executed by the observer, constitutes time itself.
Let me make sure I'm translating this correctly. Time is just the order of events.
Yes.
It's nothing more than the sequence of spatial moves generated as that primordial point of intelligence weaves through the 3D space it is creating.
Time is highly specific to the observer. It is entirely emergent. It is generated relative to the observer's absolute spatial origin as it executes these non-commutative operations. If there is no sequence of operations, there is no time.
My mind is officially blown. Let's bring back our anchor line to test this. I want to ask you the question again. What exactly is singularity? If time is just the sequence of our spatial moves through the physical glove, then at the singularity, the absolute origin point where there is no spatial extension, where the hand fits perfectly in the glove without moving.
At that primordial singularity, spatial extension vanishes, and therefore the ordinal sequence of move ceases. Consequently, emergent time completely ceases to exist.
So time only exists when the intelligence inside the glove starts wiggling the fingers, when it starts moving, rolling the dice, and creating a sequence. If my hand stops turning the dice, time literally stops for me.
Conceptually, the movement creates the sequence, and the sequence generates the phenomenon of time. But what happens when the intelligence wiggling the fingers is completely out of sync with the physical geometry of the glove it inhabits? That's where the universe fractures.
You are either the architect of reality, or you are the decaying product of it.
The division of reality rests entirely on a mathematical metric the paper calls the chiral imbalance delta.
Let's explore how this white paper categorizes everything in the universe. It creates two distinct domains of reality, and it all depends on our primary metaphor, how well the cognitive hand fits into the physical glove. Let's start with the ideal state.
The paper defines this ideal state as the domain of the observer. This phenomenon can occur at any scale, microscopic or macroscopic. It happens when a localized system achieves exact symbiosis between its projected physical geometry and its imbibed intelligence.
The physical glove and the cognitive hand are in perfect synchronization.
Right. And in the language of the paper's math, that means the chiral imbalance delta is exactly 0. There is absolutely no discrepancy.
Okay, 0 delta.
When a system achieves a delta of 0, it isn't merely a passive object floating in space. It becomes a localized realization of the singularity. It becomes an observer endowed with true agency. It possesses the capacity to wield energy and project new physical structures into the manifold.
But looking around the universe, most things don't seem perfectly balanced. We have the other side of the coin, which the paper calls the observed.
Because the creation of new structures is inherently probabilistic. Sometimes the projected physical geometry and the sustaining cognitive intelligence fail to synchronize. The physical glove is constructed too large, or the cognitive hand isn't developed enough to fill it.
When this happens, a non-zero discrepancy arises. The delta is greater than 0. The fit is sloppy.
Exactly. Systems relegated to this domain are strictly the observed. They are products, not architects. They lack structural agency. They fail to deliver stability, and most crucially, they are subject to continuous entropic decay. The paper provides a formal mathematical derivation proving that the lifespan of these systems is inversely proportional to the square of their imbalanced delta.
Wait, I need to push back. I can understand a sloppy fit causing inefficiency.
Yeah.
But are you telling me that biological aging, structural decay, literally a mountain eroding or a star burning, it's all just a mathematical discrepancy between physical structure and cognitive intelligence?
That's what the math suggests.
If aging is just a structural discrepancy, why doesn't nature just fix it? Shouldn't some systems accidentally achieve perfect balance and live forever?
Well, the uncompensated tension generated by that delta physically manifests as friction within the spatial manifold. That friction tears the structure apart over emergent time. Decay is not a biological imperative. It is a topological mathematical certainty when delta is greater than 0.
That is heavy.
Before we explain how a system can attempt to untangle that decay, let's take a look at how you, the listener, are actively participating in this exact kind of cognitive structuring right now.
True intelligence isn't hidden in a lab. It's open-sourced, collaborative, and happening right here.
The process of syncing intelligence with physical structure is totally mirrored in how we build collaborative knowledge.
I want to break the fourth wall for a moment here, because this massive concept of cognitive intelligence, perfectly syncing up with a structural framework, is exactly what we are trying to do with this platform. Insight number 1 for everyone listening. All of these deep dive explorations we do are now available in a public Notebook LM.
The link is available directly on the deep dive landing page.
We want to practice true open sourcing of knowledge. We don't want to just talk at you for an hour. We want you to check it out, interact with the research, ask questions, and let us know what you think. Your listener feedback is the cognitive intelligence we need to fit into the physical structure of this show.
Which leads to our second insight. Over the past few weeks, we've implemented quite a few structural changes to the Deep Dive platform to facilitate this collaborative intelligence. The platform is now divided into three main categories: mempool, template, and chain.
Let's define those categories. Mempool is where we house all the active bleeding-edge research. This is where we work directly with open, independent researchers to hash out these raw concepts before they are fully formed.
And template is where we place the research for public scrutiny. We post our artifacts there, like this very audio deep dive you were listening to, or the visual infographics we design, such as the dice metaphor we use for non-commutative geometry.
We want to engage with all of you in the template phase. We read your comments, and we literally iterate over them to refine our mental models. We adjust the glove to fit the hand. Finally, a template of 21 episodes is cast into what we call a block, and those blocks are permanently added to the chain of knowledge.
Refining our mental models based on collaborative feedback to achieve perfect clarity is a real-world example of what this research paper defines as untangling.
Untangling.
Yeah. Let's get back to the physics of how a system achieves cognitive clarity.
Untangling the universe doesn't mean destroying it. It means finally understanding the joke.
Demystifying the physical universe is a cognitive process, not a destructive physical event.
The white paper addresses a massive misconception in this section, one that frequently bridges high-level physical theories and even esoteric spiritual traditions. When people hear phrases like untangling the universe or dimensional collapse, they picture apocalypse.
Right, they think of the end of the world.
It sounds like Thanos snapping his fingers and turning half the universe to dust. It sounds like the literal physical dissolution of matter.
Within this rigorous topological framework, untangling has a very specific, non-destructive definition. Untangling is strictly defined as achieving cognitive clarity.
Cognitive clarity.
It is the progressive, step-by-step demystification of physical reality through the application of intelligence.
Let's bring back our dice metaphor to visualize this. If the forward physical manifestation of reality is rolling the dice forward, and then to the right to construct the physical knots of matter in space-time,
then cognitive untangling is the exact inverse vector transformation. It is executing the mathematical inverse of that quaternionic cross product.
So it's rolling the dice backward in your mind to understand why it landed that way in the first place.
Exactly. You are analyzing the rotation from within the intelligence manifold. The key distinction the paper makes is that you do not have to physically break or dissolve the matter to untangle it.
Oh, interesting.
You unpeel the layers of physical reality using your intellect. You trace the complex physical structure backward to its original structural intent, until the physical matter and the informational intent represent one single, perfectly unified picture.
Okay, so physical construction moves forward through physical sequence, building the knots, while cognitive untangling moves in reverse operational sequence, understanding the knots.
Correct.
But I have to be honest, that still sounds incredibly abstract. It sounds like a metaphor for going to therapy. Do we have any tangible, hard scientific proof that systems actually operate using this forward-reverse vector cycle in the real world?
The proof is literally running through your veins and dividing in your cells right this very second.
Your cells are constantly trying to achieve singularity, and when they fail, you age.
Cellular biology provides a totally observable theater for this chiral vector equilibrium in action.
Let's take this massive cosmic framework of observers and non-commutative geometry and apply it to something microscopic. The white paper explicitly uses cellular biology as a definitive proof of this forward and reverse vector cycle.
Let's trace the forward physical vector in biology. It operates sequentially from genetic code to spatial structure. The informational intent encoded in your DNA dictates the highly specific physical folding of proteins into three-dimensional space.
Using our metaphor, the DNA's intelligence is pushing out the physical fingers of the protein glove. It is manifesting structure.
Yes. And once the structure is built, the reverse cognitive vector activates. To maintain the health of the cell, the imbibed intelligence analyzes that 3D folded protein structure and decipheringly traces it backward to map it against the underlying DNA sequence.
It's untangling it. The cell is rolling the biological dice backward to check its own work. So what happens when the cell checks the work and the structural protein perfectly matches the DNA intent?
If the DNA intelligence and the physical protein folding are in perfect error-free synchronization, meaning the mathematical chiral delta equals precisely 0, the cell achieves structural equilibrium. It avoids metabolic decay.
Wow.
It divides naturally, functioning as a perfectly symbiotic system.
But wait, I have a major pushback here. Are you implying that a perfectly balanced cell with a delta of 0 is effectively immortal? It operates as its own mini-singularity? Do immortal cells even exist in nature?
Well, according to the paper's framework, a system at delta 0 does not experience emergent time or entropic decay in the same manner. While biological constraints in a high-friction environment make delta 0 incredibly difficult to maintain, we do see anomalous biological behavior like HeLa cells that resist standard decay.
That's true.
However, in the standard observed domain, when protein misfolding occurs or genetic transcription discrepancies arise, a chiral delta greater than 0 appears. The hand doesn't fit the glove. The untangling fails. That is the literal mechanical cause of rapid cellular decay. Aging is fundamentally a large, uncompensated chiral delta.
And human beings, perhaps intuitively grasping this truth, have recreated this exact mathematical cycle of physical creation and cognitive untangling in the machines we build and use every single day. Every time you click an app on your phone, you are sitting at the top of a physical pyramid waiting to be untangled.
Modern computing architectures perfectly mirror this structural cognitive dualism.
The paper provides another proof, moving from organic biology to synthetic computer science. Let's look at the forward physical cycle of computing. Physical creation always builds from the bottom up.
Right. The forward vector requires physical manifestation. You start by manufacturing the literal silicon hardware. Upon that foundation, you assemble complex logic gates. Then you compile the operating system kernels that direct the hardware, and finally, you render the graphical user interface, the UI, at the very top.
That entire stack is the forward physical vector of manifestation.
Exactly.
Now, think about it from the reverse cognitive cycle from the user's perspective. To master the system, to truly understand how your computer works, rather than just poking at a screen, you have to travel in reverse.
You start at the UI, the most abstracted layer. Then you intellectually unpeel the operating system layers underneath it. You learn how the software talks to the logic gates, and eventually you comprehend the physics of the underlying hardware circuits.
You are rolling the computer's dice backward in your mind. This progressive unpeeling of physical complexity through applied intellect, moving from the abstract UI back down to the raw silicon, is a perfect, tangible example of cognitive untangling.
When a systems developer fully comprehends every single layer from the UI down to the silicon, their internal mental model perfectly matches the physical structure of the machine. Their cognitive intent and the physical geometry achieve synchronization. The delta drops to 0.
But what is the ultimate goal of untangling all these layers, whether it's a biological cell checking its DNA, a developer mastering a computer architecture, or a physicist understanding the cosmos, what actually happens to the system itself when it understands its reality perfectly?
When a localized system understands its reality perfectly, systemic friction drops to absolute 0, and it becomes a natural singularity.
The moment of total comprehension isn't just an aha moment. It is a physical state of zero friction.
It is the realization of the absolute primordial state within a localized functioning system.
Let's tie this profound concept together. The white paper defines this ultimate state as the natural singularity. When a system completely unpeels and comprehends its physical reality, like the developer flawlessly understanding the computer stack, or the cell perfectly mapping its folded proteins back to its DNA, the chiral delta between structure and intelligence drops to exactly 0.
And the energetic implications of the state are profound. When the delta is 0, there is no mystery left to process. There is no hidden structural friction.
To use our metaphor, the hand completely and utterly understands the contours of the glove. It fits perfectly without stretching or tearing the fabric. And because of this perfect fit, the paper states there are no spikes of variational free energy. Let's act as a proxy for the audience here. When we say variational free energy, we essentially mean wasted effort, right? The random thermal friction of a system struggling to maintain itself.
That is an excellent translation. Variational free energy represents the systemic cost of dealing with surprise, discrepancy, or error.
Makes sense.
At delta 0, physical structure and cognitive intelligence no longer oppose each other. They do not act as disparate, warring domains. They represent a single, unified, synthesized picture of reality, operating with perfect thermodynamic efficiency.
This brings us right back to our anchor line. I'm going to look at the camera and ask it again. What exactly is singularity? The traditional view is a dead, infinitely dense dot trapped in the center of a black hole. But this paper is arguing that singularity is the reachable state of equilibrium. Any localized system that achieves perfect structural cognitive balance is a natural singularity.
You don't have to journey to the center of a collapsed star to find it. It is the state of perfect, untangled balance, achievable by localized intelligence.
But once a system reaches this perfect balance, once it becomes a true observer with a delta of 0 and 0 friction, what does it do next? It doesn't just freeze in place, perfectly enlightened, right?
A true observer does not remain static. Once it perfectly understands its current reality, it starts throwing the dice again. It begins projecting entirely new realities.
When you achieve perfect balance, you don't just sit there. You start projecting new realities.
An observer leverages its achieved equilibrium to expand intelligence across the spatial manifold.
This is where we dive into the actual mechanics of being an observer. The paper explains that once localized balance is achieved, once the delta hits 0, the observer gains true structural agency. It isn't just surviving anymore, it is creating.
Right.
It expands its intelligence by projecting new trial physical structures into 3D space. It starts weaving completely new physical gloves to see if its intelligence can fill them.
The projection of these new geometries is not strictly deterministic. It is inherently probabilistic. The paper utilizes a quantum path integral framework to weight the possible spatial trajectories of these new structures.
And again, I will firmly remind our listeners, we are not going to read out the complex path integral equations here. But you absolutely must check the website for the detailed mathematical derivations demonstrating how these probabilistic trajectories are weighted by the quantum action. Conceptually, though, what does this probabilistic nature mean for the new physical reality being created?
Because the observer is essentially taking calculated quantum guesses at new geometries, the scalar energy manifested in the new physical structure and the cognitive intelligence imbibed within it are going to fluctuate. They will temporarily deviate from perfect chiral balance.
Wait, a pushback here. Why risk the perfect balance? If a system has achieved natural singularity, 0 friction, and total comprehension, why would it voluntarily project new trial geometries that are probabilistic? Why roll the dice and risk the hand not fitting the new glove?
Because the intrinsic nature of intelligence is expansion. The system risks temporary imbalance to increase the total structural volume of its domain. It projects a larger glove, aiming to grow its intelligence to fill it.
And what happens when those newly projected quantum guesses miss the mark? When the hand can't fill the new, larger glove, and the delta is suddenly greater than 0 again?
When those trial projections miss, they generate uncompensated tension within the fabric of the non-commutative spatial manifold itself. And accounting for that tension demands a radical rethinking of how we view the universal laws of conservation of energy.
Forget what you learned in high school physics. The universe doesn't have a fixed energy budget.
We must replace the classical concept of static energy conservation with dynamic vector equilibrium.
This is one of the most paradigm-shifting sections of the white paper. Let's talk about the classical conservation of energy. We are all taught from a young age that the universe is essentially a closed, static container.
Right.
You have a fixed, finite energy budget, and you just shuffle that energy around between potential, kinetic, and thermal states. You can't magically make more of it.
That closed system model works for basic mechanics, but this quaternionic topological framework reevaluates energy conservation entirely. It replaces the classical law with a foundational new principle, structural cognitive chiral balance.
Okay, let's break that down. Dynamic vector equilibrium. What does that actually mean for the creation of new physical reality?
Let's rely on the core metaphor again. The physical knotting of space, the forward rotation of the dice to create the physical glove, generates a specific mathematical vector. The cognitive mirror formation, the intelligence of the hand executing the inverse-reverse rotation to understand the glove, generates an opposite vector.
Right, they are chiral mirror images. In algebra, it's like a plus A cross B operation matched with a minus B cross A operation.
Exactly. When you sum those operations together, because they generate equal and opposite chiral vectors, they cancel each other out entirely.
Wow.
Therefore, the net energetic cost of creating physical reality relative to the absolute spatial origin is identically 0 at all times.
Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I am fully comprehending the magnitude of what you just said. If the energetic cost of the physical mass and the energetic cost of the cognitive intelligence exactly cancel each other out mathematically, if the net cost to the universe is always 0, does that mean what I think it means?
It means the universe is not a closed box slowly running out of gas. It means infinite physical creation is entirely mathematically permissible.
You can build infinite amounts of matter as long as you have the intelligence to pay for it.
As long as the chiral vector equilibrium is rigorously maintained, the potential for structural creation is literally boundless.
Let's look at the complete field equation derived in the paper to back this up. We all know Einstein's famous E equals mc squared, which relates energy and mass. But this paper expands that equation significantly. It demonstrates that physical mass, expressed as E divided by c squared, and cognitive intelligence, which it defines formally as I equals E divided by c squared, are dual chiral manifestations of the exact same scalar energy.
Within this framework, c squared is no longer simply the speed of light squared acting as a speed limit. It functions fundamentally as the universal conversion constant for both spatial mass condensation and cognitive structuring.
This is a staggering conclusion. The paper mathematically proves that infinite matter can be created from nothing. The universe can expand endlessly, producing infinite physical structures, stars, planets, and galaxies, as long as the physical structure and the cognition remain in perfect counterbalance, as long as the chiral delta remains exactly zero.
The mathematics support infinite expansion, yes, but there is a strict, undeniable cost to imbalance. If there is a structural discrepancy in those new projections, if the new glove and the hand don't match and the delta rises above zero, the system instantly loses its observer status. It becomes the observed.
And as we discussed earlier, the observed begins to decay.
The uncompensated field tension from that imbalance induces entropic decay, breaking the structure down until it can be reassimilated.
This fundamentally shifts our entire cosmological worldview from one of terrifying scarcity to one of absolute abundance. The universe isn't a dying machine winding down. It's an accounting ledger, just trying to balance its checkbook of physical matter and cognitive intelligence.
Exactly.
But I have to push back on the infinite abundance idea. If the cosmos can expand infinitely by projecting these trial geometries, what pulls it back?
Yeah.
How does the life cycle of the cosmos actually close, if not by running out of energy?
To close the cosmic cycle, we don't run out of energy. We have to untie every single knot in the universe and return to the absolute beginning.
The end of the universe isn't a fiery explosion or a cold death. It's the ultimate unknotting.
It is the complete topological untangling of all non-commutative spatial trajectories across the manifold.
The paper explains that physical spacetime is literally constructed by knotting 3D spatial trajectories together through those sequential non-commutative operations we visualized with the rotating dice. The universe is a vast tapestry of these spatial knots.
As localized cognitive systems throughout the universe resolve environmental friction, as they process information and understand their surroundings, they are executing the explicit inverse sequence of those quaternionic rotations.
Right.
They are quite literally unknotting the spatial manifold.
Again, we have to remind folks to check the mathematical derivations on the site for the specific mechanics of this, particularly the equations involving the Chern-Simons invariance. But conceptually, to translate this for the audience, the paper describes this untangling process as the winding numbers dropping to zero. As we learn, as we demystify the reality around us, the winding numbers of these knots drop, and the topological field tension relaxes.
This localized untangling eventually scales, leading to the ultimate conclusion of universal dimensional collapse. When all topological knots across both the physical and cognitive domains are fully untangled and comprehended, mass itself dissolves.
Because the physical geometry of the glove has been traced entirely back to its initial structural intent. The hand has understood every thread of the glove, so the glove is no longer needed.
Emergent time ceases because the entire sequence of non-commutative operations has been fully reversed and accounted for. Variational free energy vanishes completely. The entire universe returns to its primordial state. Scalar energy is zero, mass is zero, intelligence is zero, time is zero.
So if I'm hearing you right, the end of the universe isn't a tragic destruction event. The end of the universe is simply the achievement of complete and total understanding of itself.
The universe returns to the pure, universal, absolute observer. It is a return to perfect peace. Let's pull all these threads together to see the unified picture of this framework.
We started with a paradox of infinite gravity. We end with a unified model of reality, intelligence, and time.
The paper offers a complete comparative structural synthesis across major theoretical paradigms.
Let's synthesize how this new white paper stacks up against the classical models we used to introduce the show. In classical general relativity, you have a continuous 4D spacetime manifold, and the singularity is a catastrophic boundary breakdown where the math fails. In quantum field theory, you have quantum fields operating probabilistically in Hilbert space.
But this non-commutative topological model is fundamentally different from both. It places a scalar observer at an absolute reference point in 3D space and mathematically establishes that time is not a dimension, but a phenomenon entirely emergent from the sequence of the observer's operations.
Let's do a rapid-fire recap of the 5 core conclusions of this paper so everyone can walk away with this framework locked in. Number 1, the singularity is not a dense dot of matter, it is the absolute observer. Number 2, untangling the universe is not mystical destruction, it is the process of cognitive demystification.
Number 3, perfect chiral balance, where delta equals 0, creates observers with true agency, while imbalance creates the entropic decaying observed. Number 4, infinite creation of matter is mathematically permitted through chiral vector equilibrium, meaning the universe is abundant, not scarce.
And number 5, dimensional collapse is just the return to state 0, the cognitive untying of all the spatial knots.
Which brings us back one last time to the core thesis that started this entire journey.
The anchor line.
Yeah.
I will ask it one final time, and I want you to answer it utilizing everything we've synthesized today. What exactly is singularity?
It is the perfect, absolute equilibrium of physical matter and cognitive intelligence. It is the physical glove and the cognitive hand acting as one single unified reality, functioning with zero friction and existing outside of emergent time.
And that leaves us with one final, slightly terrifying but incredibly empowering thought for you to carry forward as you go about your day. If every perfectly balanced system is a natural singularity, then the entire universe might just be a mirror waiting for you to look into it.
This framework implies we are not just passive inhabitants of a cold physical geometry. We are highly active, necessary participants in its evolution.
I want to introduce a final extrapolative thought that builds on everything we've read in this paper. Think about human curiosity. Think about what you are doing right now, listening to this deep dive, pushing your brain to comprehend the mechanics of the universe. If human cognition mapping physical structure literally untangles the knots of the universe and drops the free energy friction to 0, then our curiosity isn't just some random accidental evolutionary quirk that helped us find berries.
Human curiosity is the localized manifestation of the mechanism itself.
Yes, it is the fundamental physical mechanism by which the universe is trying to return to the primordial singularity. We aren't just in the universe, we are the universe's cognitive untangling engine. By trying to understand the stars, biology, and math, we are rolling the cosmic dice backward. We're actively unknotting the cosmos.
That is a profound philosophical implication backed by the topology. By resolving friction and understanding our environment, we are pushing the localized delta of our reality toward 0.
Before we sign off, I need to add a quick meta note here for transparency. Though the name of this platform was historically Deep Dive with Gemini, and we frequently use Google Gemini, Notebook LM, and Mosaic.so for generating the visual stories and infographics you see on our site, this show is not affiliated with Google or Mosaic. They're just amazing products that help us build these complex models.
Thank you for exploring this profound structural architecture with us. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or Fountain.fm. True intelligence is inherently collaborative, as we've discussed today. For the 2 to 3 minute long visual clips highlighting these concepts, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Your critiques convert raw ideas into consensus. You aren't just listening, you are taking a stake in a shared chain of knowledge.
Keep untangling the knots of your reality. Keep refining your mental models. We'll see you next time. I'm Satosha.
And I'm Satoshi.